The Alex Goldstein Property Show.
Stray FM.
Welcome again to the Alex Goldstein Property Show, the only fast-paced property radio show on Stray FM, which aims to give you up-to-the-minute expert property advice from a wide range of related businesses, insider knowledge and know-how all packed in, so you can make the best informed decision when it comes to buying or selling your home. We're available for podcast download on the first day of every month, so make sure you sign up to the Alex Goldstein social media accounts to get an early reminder of this and to get expert property advice whenever you need. In this month's show, we will be getting the inside track from Harrogate's very own answer to Phil Spencer, specialist insurance broker Mark Robinson, and discuss the merits of open viewings. We of course also have the Alex Goldstein top tips. So much to cram in, so let's get straight on with it.
Property News with Alex Goldstein.
Stray FM.
This month we are discussing the property portals, or the property search engines. I'm sure you will have all heard of Rightmove and Zoopla, which are the UK's most well-known and high-profile property search portals. However, there is a relatively new contender in town, and it's called On The Market. Now, On The Market, this was launched in January 2015 by a consortium of estate agents, and they had the sole aim to wrestle control from the two market leaders, Rightmove and Zoopla, by only allowing estate agents who wish to use their site to list their properties on only one other major competitor's portal. So in other words, for an agent to advertise on The Market, they could only then advertise on either Rightmove or Zoopla. And at the time, many agents gave up Zoopla. The other significant difference about On The Market is that it's only full-time office-based estate agents that are allowed to list their properties. So no online agents and no private listings. So that's a bit more unusual. And being owned and run by estate agents, their aim is to be in control of their website presence, and to do this at a more modest cost than Rightmove, which is, quite honestly, it's viewed by many agents as having them over a barrel due to the very high monthly costs, and arguably in turn this is passed on to you, the consumer. Now, as this is an agency-owned website, the On The Market logo appears across agents' marketing materials and the offices, which is probably why you've seen it now, together with a lot of their TV advertising campaigns. The site has speed and simplicity on its side, plus, of course, no adverts to confuse you, and it's a lot clearer on the eye. The other significant factor is that some agents who subscribe release their properties first onto On The Market, and that is before the likes of Rightmove. So therefore, if you're looking to stay ahead of the competition, which we all are when we're buying, this is a very lucrative option. Greater competition within this marketplace can only mean better news for you, the consumer or homeowner, as lower costs will hopefully in due course be passed on to you. The greater the online exposure when selling, then better off you're going to be. Time will tell, of course, if On The Market proves to be the significant challenger to Rightmove and Zoopla, but so far it's arguably made solid ground in one of the most competitive estate agency related sectors. This month, I thought I'd turn everything on its head, and I thought I'd give you an insight into my world. So I've invited in guest host for the time being, Michael P. Kotler, who is Harrogate's equivalent of Jeremy Paxman. Michael, it's over to you.
So this opportunity is for everybody to understand what Alex is all about, and really how he got to do what he does so well.
Yeah.
So first question for you, Alex, I suppose, is what's your background? How did you get into this sector?
I suppose it was just by sheer chance. Many years ago when I was at university, I got some great work experience, and from there, sort of doors start to open. You get an insight into the estate agency world. Got a great job with Clutton, who are a big name, sort of in the southeast and London, and sort of worked up the rankings, and quite a lot of experience over about 13, 14 years.
You work with some really big companies, haven't you? You must have got a huge amount of experience looking at it from both sides of the fence, I suppose.
Yeah, no, very much so. I mean, you really have seen sort of all sorts of properties. ranging up to stuff that you sort of see in the press on a national scale. So some stuff that you'll remember, I think, for the rest of your life, dare I say, on some of them.
Wow. So what made you start up on your own then? I mean, you've got a pretty good job. You're working in some pretty big organisations. You've got some real sort of kudos there. What was the reason why you decided to pack it all in and start your own business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I suppose I became disillusioned with the way that estate agency was being run. It was very, very different to when I first started. A lot of businesses nowadays, and especially estate agency, it's all run on targets. It's key performance indicators. It's daily targets, and it's all about how many calls you're doing, how many deals you've got, and it's almost that you've got this sort of big stick mentality from head office. And I just felt that you're almost incentivized, I suppose, not to look in client best interests at times, and it didn't quite sort of fit true with who I am, and I suppose morally didn't quite feel right.
Okay, so when you say from a moral perspective, what do you mean?
Well, as an estate agent nowadays, and a lot of these guys, it's all about, I suppose, the short term. It's all about short-term targets, get it in and bill it. So I remember very well that you went to see, say you're selling your property. I'd go to see you, and before I'd even stepped through the door, in the back of my mind, I've just got to think, I've got to get Michael to sign that terms of business. I've got to get his instruction. It may be, conversely, that the best advice for you to maximise the value of a property could be, Michael, you know what? Let's go and get outline planning permission for that big extension. Let's add value by doing that, and then let's put it on the market. You've got to look in client best interests, and now I don't have targets or KPIs or anything like that. It's genuinely looking in your best interests as a homeowner to get the best buy.
It's almost like one of those programs that you see on television, isn't it, where you have an expert. People often call you the Phil Spencer of Harrogate.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that sort of situation where you have somebody like Phil Spencer, he's an expert in property, comes in, looks at the property and gives them an objective perspective. And from that objective perspective, people then start to build trust and understand what you're coming from. From your point of view, why do you think that's going to be beneficial for the client?
A lot of it nowadays is the fact that you've got an expert like myself who's got a lot of years under his belt, and experience is, I think, absolutely key, critical on dealing with, let's face it, your most important asset on this planet. Yeah,
don't they say that it's the most stressful thing to purchase as well, a house? Isn't divorce just behind that?
I think divorce is just behind it, and I think death probably just behind that. It is still one of the most stressful things in your life, and actually the biggest key to it is actually predicting problems before they've happened and to nip them in the bud, so again you can keep the process very smooth.
It's all about proactivity, I suppose, as opposed to reactivity, isn't it?
It is that, but also it comes down to experience, and it's one of the for me it's the biggest frustration out there. At the end of the day, estate agency isn't licensed. Anyone could start up. You could start up tomorrow, your own estate agency, and just start going. And as long as you've ticked the right boxes legally, you're absolutely fine. The biggest problem, I have to say, is a lot of these online guys that sort of buy franchise opportunities. Yes, they are amazing salespeople. They're from car sales, or I used to be insurance sort of thing. Dealing with property is something very specialist and shouldn't just be sort of glibly sort of thrown away. And very often they get caught out because they don't have that foresight and knowledge and experience to see through a problem. And it's very often where, sadly, I have to get involved because the sale's gone completely off kilter, and it's down to someone like me to come in objectively and just get it back on track.
And the other thing, of course, which must be a huge issue, is that it affects the confidence in the individual and in the world of estate agents selling property, that they think that everybody's tarred with the same brush.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're an estate agent, politician, or dare I say a traffic warden. I think every sort of sector in this world, you've got a tarnishing of sorts. Estate agents used to be, I think, the most hated role out in the UK. I think that is topped by the bankers and the politicians at the moment. But it is a great pity because there really are some superb estate agents and negotiators and actual team setups, and it's just knowing what to look for with experience behind the scenes to guide a client through those sort of fairly tough times.
Okay, so let's look at it from a slightly different perspective now. Let's look at it from the consumer's perspective. What is the advantage, and what do you do for me? Having decided that I want to sell my property, what exactly is the process that you follow, and what would you do for me?
So if you're looking to sell your property, and as you probably know, I cover Yorkshire and London, as I've intimated already, it's about where you can maximise value. Now, this could be going through planning, it's sorting the cosmetics out, it could be the finer details, but also, as with a lot of these things, it's planning everything behind the scenes. And actually getting the agent out is one of the last things you actually do. So it's sort of making sure you've got the solicitors lined up. It may be that we call on a surveyor to check for the roof, so we've got that absolutely nailed down.
So how do you get paid from the selling perspective? How does that work?
Well, once I've sort of bought in and advised on independently the most appropriate agent, I link in with the agent on a weekly basis. I remain proactive, so I would call said agent once a week on behalf of Michael, who's selling the property, get the latest from them. It takes me 30 seconds to a minute to understand where they're going because I've been there and done it myself. And then I can report back to Michael. 20 minutes, half an hour, Michael, this is what's going on. This is what it all means. Proactively, with my experience, we need to do, I don't know, change the online advert. Agreed? Great. Agent, please can you get on with it? So all of a sudden, you're now speaking weekly with the estate agent. You're being proactive because you've got me on board. The key to it is the appointed agent, who's been instructed independently of me, charges you their standard commission rate in the market. The agent pays me a cut of their commission. So if you are selling a property, you have absolutely nothing to pay me at any point to have me on board. So I suppose it gets into no-brainer type categories, a lot of people say.
So literally the agent will pay you. So the house owner, the homeowner who's selling has got no cost for all of that objective perspective.
No, the cost remains exactly the same. It just means that you've got extra expertise and knowledge and guidance. The agents like it because, in effect, I have, forgive the analogy, packaged up you and the property. We've got the planning, we've got the solicitor, we've got the right marketing strategy lined up. You're ready to go. It's win-win situation. The agent still retains a good proportion of the fee. I get paid a percentage of that. It's win-win, and that's where I can link in with a lot of the solicitors, the private banks. I've done sort of stuff with Google in London as well, because again, it's a very unusual service.
Okay, fantastic. The other week I was out and about and I was speaking to a solicitor. And the solicitor was raving about you and saying how you actually helped one of their clients. How does that one work?
That's very kind. Yeah, no, thanks for mentioning it. This was actually on the buying side of things, and this was actually for a client of theirs who was getting very frustrated. They were in a good position to proceed, but they weren't getting any traction with the agents. They weren't getting tipped off early, and they were very fortunate. They were all cash. There was no mortgage. They were in rented, but they just weren't being taken seriously.
Okay, so just one thing I just wanted to make clear here. So this is the other side of the business.
It is,
which is where you're actually going into the market and purchasing properties for clients.
Correct.
So just rewind a tad and just explain how that part of the business works. So you've got the selling side that you've just talked about, and this is the other side of the business.
It is, and again, very often people, as I've said, get frustrated, or they don't have the time, or very often they don't know what they're doing. It's all well and good that you hear on the TV and in the media, well, this is how to buy a property and this is what to do, but actually putting that through into real terms, if you've never done it before, it's actually incredibly daunting. So again, adding value through there, and I do a lot of relocations. As I said, I cover Yorkshire and London, so people moving between the two, I can effectively hold their hand and guide it through. But again, it's with experience. I am an ex-estate agent at the end of the day, and you know how the system works. You know how to get your client to the very front of the queue. And sometimes, and again, it's a big trend at the moment, it's what's called the off-market sector. And this isn't necessarily with estate agents, or if it is, it's not on the open market, it's not online. Very often you're going direct to the developers that have just finished a new project, or because I've been in the business a long time, I know the homeowner. So if you give me your criteria, we'll go out and search for whatever specification you're after. We negotiate and we secure it on the right terms and see it all the way through. And I act on behalf of you, the purchaser in that instance, and you just pay me a fee for that service.
So this is a service where you're paid a fee, but again, you give a completely objective perspective. And from what you're saying to me then, you actually have access to properties that are probably not on Rightmove or not on other websites that most people would look at when they're trying to buy property.
Probably just over half the purchases that I've done have been completely off market. No one really knows about it, and you are just placing the buyer, my client, with a specific type of property, and it's guiding them through that. It's also then bolting on a lot of connections that I've got. Again, I don't get anything for it, and I always say to everyone up front, but very often someone moves into a property, they buy a property, and I don't know, they want to do the extension, they need the roof sorting, or they want some really nice sort of carpeting to go through. Who do you know? Who do you go to? Who's trustworthy? Well,
that's a whole ballpark on its own. Getting tradesmen in and knowing who you can trust and getting the best price and all that kind of stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely. And again, I've been round the block, as they say, a lot of years. I know a lot of these guys. They are completely trustworthy, and I don't charge for it. They don't charge anymore. But again, it's looking at the bigger picture, which I wasn't always allowed to do in the corporate world. Is that if I can help you as a buyer. And indeed, as a seller, if I help you and the general cause, again, it helps you, it helps me. Everyone wins, as I see it. It's not about getting, as a lot of businesses do, sort of backhanders in brown envelopes and all of that. I'm not into that at all. And keep it very simple.
So it's all about really adding value to the client in every respect, whether it's from a purchasing perspective, whether it's from a selling perspective. It's all about adding value.
Yeah, very much so. That's exactly what it's about.
So the other night, reading through the Yorkshire Post, and you've got a column.
Yeah, no, I do. Yorkshire Post property column. I think the next one's out in about 2 weeks' time, and again, that's giving you an insight into my world. It's not sort of selling anything, as you may sometimes read. It's just giving really good advice and expert opinion and experience. That's what it's about as well.
Fantastic. So, in summary, you're buying properties, you're selling properties. You've got 14 years experience. You basically have the majority of your stuff is not the kind of stuff that you would see on Rightmove. It's something that's offline. Yep. So if people are interested in properties that they probably don't even know that are for sale, you're the man to speak to.
Oh, yeah, I'd very much put it like that.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Alex.
Not at all. Thanks very much, Michael.
The Property Hospital, Stray FM.
The Property Hospital is all about me answering your questions, queries and quibbles when it comes to your experiences in the property sector. And this week I'm answering a question from Sam, who's got this to say.
Yeah, so I hear a lot about viewing days and how they're quite beneficial because obviously you just have to have your house clean on one day and a lot of people come in at once. I just want to know what your take on it is really because I'm wanting to know what the best thing to do is with regards to making sure my house sells.
Sam, interesting question here. As I see it, look, open viewing days can be very useful if you've got an unusual property in the market and one that's likely to create a lot of instant interest. And it's a very fair way to get a large number of people through the door in the most time-efficient manner. Now, this situation often applies to properties that need extensive refurbishment because they don't often crop up in the market. Now, open viewing days are a useful option if your property falls into this category or as part of an overall marketing strategy. However, don't think for a minute that you're going to get a barrage of viewings with 30-odd people storming through your home in an afternoon, as this really very rarely nowadays happens. And more often than not, you just get a small handful of people coming to view. The key with open viewings is to keep the time frame for people to view quite tight, such as a couple of hours and not a whole day or afternoon, as this will now focus their efforts. Ensure that the agent can ideally accompany the viewers around and that all viewers are signed into the property so they can be followed up down the line for feedback. Personally, it's usually best to have viewers shown around individually, as you can often get more out of them in terms of what they like or dislike about the property. I'd always try this route first and then revert to an open viewing opportunity if the need arises. I hope that helps.
The Property Hot Seat.
Stray FM.
Name.
Mark Robinson.
Business.
Henderson Insurance Brokers Limited.
Mark, thanks so much for coming in.
No problem.
I suppose it's a phrase often thrown around, an insurance broker. I mean, what do you guys actually do at the end of the day? What does an insurance broker actually entail?
Very, very good question. One of the big things people tend to forget about insurance brokers are that we are actually a professional advisory service. We are advisors. So it's best to think of us as a lawyer or an estate agent. We're here to act for the client. The common myth is that we're there to act for the insurance company. Yeah. And in fact, we're not. It's the other way around entirely. So it's our job as a broker to advise you, A, what cover you need, B, why you need that cover, and C, to make sure that you get the right price for that cover. To make sure you get the best deal in the market and that you're speaking with the correct insurers for that.
And the obvious question, which I'm sure will come as a result of this, is how are you paid? How does that side of things actually work and come together?
Again, very simply, two methods really. There's, depending on what type of insurance policy it is. So if we're looking at household insurance, private car insurance, the personal lines type insurances, brokers will 9 out of 10 times be paid via a commission. So that's where the insurers will pay us as the broker for arranging that insurance policy.
So sort of an introductory fee or a procurement fee, as the finance guys would refer it to.
Yeah.
So as a client, Alex, buying said premium from Mark, I'm not paying anything extra on the bottom line. It's the fact that you've advised me and you've said you need to go with ABC Insurance Limited, and ABC turn around to you, Mark, and say thanks so much, here's a fee towards bringing Alex on board. Is that effectively how it works?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Now, if we were looking at the corporate side of insurances, so commercial business type insurance, again, we can either take a commission as payment from the insurer, or for large premiums, we would look to net that down, go commission free, and charge an agreed fee dependent on the service. Exactly. Yeah.
So what lines of insurance do you cover? Because obviously you've got the obvious ones such as homes and insurance. You can then think of all sorts of quirky things. I know there's sort of the salary side of things, so you can get insurance against that, and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful bolt-ons. What do Henderson's really specialise in? What's your forte?
Well, we are a general insurance broker, so it's a tough question to sort of nail down to any one particular thing we specialise in, because we do everything as a general broker.
Okay.
However, as a group, we do have various divisions. So we have a large credit insurance division, we have a large high net worth division, we have a large bonding division for construction bonds and what have you. So yeah, difficult one to nail down. So we will look at the general business insurance and the household.
Basically, if I can think of it, Henderson's Insurance could probably got someone within their office team that can actually sort of point me in the right direction and help me out.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we're a Lloyd's broker, so we place business into Lloyd's of London. So anything, as you say, that you can think of that can be insured, we will find a way to insure.
That's all you need to know. And I suppose everyone always sort of says that, why don't I go to one of these comparison websites of Money Meerkat, so to speak, and all of that. What are the issues with doing that? Why would I not go to one of the online providers, and why would I want to go to a general insurance broker like you?
Well, the first thing to remember is that online insurance providers aren't authorised to provide advice. They are basically there to provide a service of, I want to buy X product, this is X product for you to buy. Therefore, if you use an online provider, you're basically paying your money and taking a chance that you've decided that the product you're buying is correct. The providers aren't likely to give you any huge support in the event of a claim, and where they do give advice, 9 times out of 10, again, this is going to be sort of call centre type advice, which isn't specifically tailored to the requirement of that particular question.
So you're taking effectively more of a punt, a bit more of a gamble, as you said. You're running through a huge list of possible options, but I suppose as with all these things, and I know insurers are well known for it, it's all in the small print, isn't it?
Exactly.
And there's sort of things that are omitted sometimes, whether accidentally or not, but I dare say you guys are well versed and can see through all of that.
Certainly, and on the subject of claims, if you go to an online provider, a direct writer, and you have an issue with the claim, when you're going to challenge that, you are one person challenging a claim. Whereas if you go via an insurance broker, it's likely that broker has millions of pounds with that particular insurer of placed business. And therefore, we're not then just approaching that insurer to resolve an issue as an individual. We're going as a buying group, so to speak. And also on top of that, we've dealt with pretty much every claim, every type of claim there is going. So we also have the precedent to say, okay, well, this is how you resolved this type of claim last time around, and this is the way we want to go this claim again. So it is entirely down to the service and the advice, and that's harking back to what I mentioned earlier. We are a professional, brokers are a professional service.
As a generalisation, with your experience, what are the pitfalls that the buying public need to be aware of when getting involved into the insurance world, whether it's for cars or houses? What are the pitfalls you need to be really careful of?
The biggest one really is underinsurance. So this is obviously you're not valuing your possessions correctly, or buying a poor policy that has abnormal exclusions in just because it was the cheapest one available.
Yeah.
Also, paying for cover that's not required is another big one we see, especially when we look at direct policies. Again, it tends to be a one-size-fits-all type arrangement. We look at on the subject of properties, we look at rental insurance, and a lot of people that rent don't tend to buy insurance simply because they think, well, you've only really got contents cover, and the landlord will look after the rest of it. What they don't realise is that a policy gives them more than just contents cover, and one of the big issues for them is liability or negligence that would damage other people's property. So, for example, you're renting a property in an apartment and you flood your flat, then great, you'd be covered, but what about the people in the flat below? They're going to...
Isn't that covered by landlord insurance?
If it's you that's done it as the tenant, then it's your liability.
Really?
So it would come against your liability.
Well, I tell you, you learn all sorts on this show. I'd had assumed that the landlord cover may have sort of covered that under the...
Landlord cover, it would cover the damage to their property, but not necessarily damage to other people's property.
Great tip there. Some great insight there into the insurance and brokerage world, and some real great insider tips. I suppose just as a parting thing, I always like to ask something a bit more amusing. What's the most expensive possession you ever had the pleasure of insuring, Mark?
As a group, we routinely insure extremely high value items. I think the most expensive and exciting item I've ever seen insured was a vintage Patek Philippe watch. We insured recently for just over £1 million. That stands out in my mind. But,
I think it would in most people's.
Yeah. As a group, we insure several classic cars. We insure a few racing teams that have some fairly sizable vehicles, and again recently we've insured an engagement ring for about 2.2 million. So across the group there will be more stories to tell that I'm not aware of, but we certainly have some fairly sizable toys.
No kidding. Very nice to hear. And I suppose if anyone wants to talk through their £2.2 million engagement ring or any other insurance matters, how can people reach you and chat it all through?
Well, we've recently opened a new office in Harrogate, so the best number for us is the office line, which is 01423 200 000.
Fantastic. Mark, thanks so much for coming on and talking it all through.
Thank you.
Alex Goldstein's top tip.
When you're looking to buy, there are 3 key top tips to get right every time. Firstly, you need to get yourself into the best possible position. And I know people often think they know what this means, but ideally this actually means you're in rented accommodation. Being under offer is still considered relatively risky by the estate agents, as there's an additional chain involved which they don't have much control over. Going into rented when you sell means that you are chain free for this part of the transaction. When you then go on to buy, it means that you are purchasing from a position of strength, and this is seen as very low risk. Overall, it also takes the stress completely out of your sale and purchase. Look, I know it's 2 moves, but honestly, it really is well worth it. The other point when buying is to have your mortgage lined up. Due to the current financial regulations, getting mortgages through takes so much longer. And to prove that you're partway down the line and more reliable than most, go through your lender and get what's called an agreement in principle or a decision in principle lined up. This is effectively just a side of paper saying that your lender is going to give you a mortgage for such and such amount, subject to a couple of conditions. To get this will mean a bit of work for you and your lender, but it really does show good intent from your part when you're buying. The third and final point is to have your solicitor instructed and ready to go. And this means getting them to open a file for you, sign off client identification checks, and possibly have some minor funds on account to get the searches undertaken ASAP. You really would be amazed how long these couple of points can take. So it's best, as I see it, to get them out of the way when you've got time on your side and you're not under intense pressure from the seller, the estate agent and their solicitor pushing you for answers on other matters. If you need to talk these points through further, you only need drop me a line. That's all for this month from the Alex Goldstein Property Show, and what a programme it's been. If you really want some top expert advice, come to my educational talk at Leeds Business Week in October, where I will be speaking alongside none other than PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's free, and full details can be found on my website, alexgoldstein.co.uk. There is also my new Saturday Yorkshire Post property column, which is out in the next couple of weeks. The next episode is out on the 1st of October, so make sure you tune in for that. Until next time.